There we go.
Yay! Hello and welcome everybody. It's Lillian and Freddie here on a take two. We had a little techie issue initially, but we are now live with Facebook. So thank you for those who have been patient. If you have been waiting for us, we truly appreciate your patience and consideration. So today I'm really excited to be sharing with my friend and my colleague, Freddie Mendoza. So Freddie's from Tucson, Arizona, and we have connected because of our mutual love and interest for the Nurtured Heart approach and for helping parents and educators to really enjoy happy and healthy children and relationships. And Freddie is such an advocate for the Nurtured Heart approach over there in the States, and he's fortunate enough to live close by my absolute mentor, Howard Glasser, who founded the Nurtured Heart approach way back 30 plus years ago. So maybe, Freddie, because I know you were originally introduced to the Nurtured, well, welcome firstly.
Hello.
I know that you were originally introduced to Nurtured Heart approach way back, but then as a young male teacher, you kind of didn't take it on board initially, but then you were reintroduced. So maybe tell us a little bit for those people here in Australia, because we are not as familiar with the Nurtured Heart approach as you guys are, and particularly where you come from, where it's very, very prominent. Tell us a little bit of background about Howie and how it all started, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So Howard Glasser is here from Tucson, and he was a therapist working with difficult children. He actually had a clinic here in Tucson named Center for the Difficult Child, if you can imagine that. And who might call that hotline and the distress they must be under to call the Center for the Difficult Child. So that was maybe in the early to mid 90s. I first came across it as I was starting my teaching career, maybe 98, 99-ish. It did not ring true to me at all. It sounded very, very hippie-ish, very soft, very fluffy language. I have no issues with hippies, but it was not speaking to me at that point. So I continued my teaching career. I taught for over 20 years here in Tucson, high school kids. I was reintroduced to the Nurtured Heart approach in 2019, and it was interesting how I had changed and matured and experienced life as a parent and a teacher, but also how Howie had made some changes, and every single word just hit me like so powerfully. And so for these last 3 years or so, I've really been involved in trying to spread the approach. With Howie's work, it's really been kind of a hotbed here in Tucson in education, and then spreading into therapy and parenting groups. And then there's a couple other places. New Jersey here in the States is using it all through their system of care, and in central kind of not coastal California, so like Merced, Pico area, it's really popular. And then there's a couple other little spots, but we're trying to spread, we're trying to grow, we're trying to even become known outside of just school and parenting and just for difficult children. I think this approach really can speak and work in many, many different areas. So that's what I hope we can express, and we can introduce to some people who are just becoming familiar with it.
I agree, Freddie. I think it spans beyond teaching and parenting, because for me, if somebody asks me what the Nurtured Heart approach is, I say it's a way of being. It's a way of connecting and relationshiping with everybody in our lives. So whether they're, our kids, our partners, students, if you're a teacher or an educator, it's just a way of connecting, even with people you just meet. Like, it's such a beautiful way of looking for something to acknowledge that will build that person up. I love, we talk about in the Nurtured Heart approach, inner wealth and building up a portfolio. And we can do that in a fleeting moment for somebody we just meet and will never see again, or we can build up that inner wealth and portfolio of, our children over months and years. So you just prompted a question from what you just shared. So you were teaching for several years, many years probably, before you were reintroduced to Nurtured Heart Approach and became a trainer. So you were also a dad. So you'd been parenting pre becoming a Nurtured Heart certified trainer, and you were parenting and you were teaching. So what were the key differences that learning the Nurtured Heart Approach made for both your parenting and your teaching? I know that's a big, huge question, and
oh, it's crystal clear, like a lightning strike of truth when you ask that. It's I love my children. I have two, a daughter and a son, and they are spectacular, and I am so blessed to have a loving family. And I loved them obviously from the moment I first saw them. And my students as well. We ran a little charter school here in Tucson, Arizona College Prep Academy. My sister and I ran it, had about 120 students. And so very close-knit is the reason that I share that. And we loved the students. We got to know the families incredibly well. And the major shift, like when I really started getting into Nurtured Heart, and it's riddled with guilt, and it's riddled with feeling like, oh my gosh, that was horrible. So if you ever begin to get into Nurtured Heart, just know that that's a reality and you have to deal with it. And, you know, we were doing the best we could. But the overarching feeling that I got was the love is right. The feeling is right. The teaching of the lessons and the things I'm trying to get across are right. What was so backwards, so painfully backwards, was just the timing. It was just the timing. So I know you're going to want to add more in just a second, but what I would just share very quickly is Howard Glasser really spends a lot of time telling stories and doing different things that really illustrate the timing. And it's just, I gave so many beautiful lectures, man. I was good. And sometimes I was on fire. They were like world class, could have been Nobel level lectures or reminders or love talk, pep talks, whatever you want to call them. But I did them after the problem had happened, or when we were already having a disciplinary issue. And obviously the kids, or my kids or my students' walls were up and they weren't listening. So man, I delivered these incredible, beautiful sermons almost, but totally wasted. And what the beauty of the Nurtured Heart is if I had just waited sometimes 10 seconds, I'm not talking about the next day, I'm not talking about an hour later, I'm talking about sometimes it's literally a matter of seconds later, just waiting for the energy to shift. And then I could have dived in and it would have been incredibly powerful. So that's the major thing. It's just take all the love, all the caring, all the empathy, all the wanting to build them up and create them into the adults that you're going to want them to be. But just think about the timing. Just the timing is the big shift.
I love that. And that falls right in with our what we don't know about parenting and relationshiping, because I think it's a generational thing. And I know for myself and for the hundreds and hundreds of people I've spoken to, that we all, as parents and educators, have love in our heart to have beautiful, loving and connected relationships. But I love the concept that that Howie talks about in the upside down parenting. And when I first heard that, it really made a lot of sense, even though initially I'm like, what do you mean upside down parenting? Because like you were just saying, you had all these beautiful intentions for your students and for your children, but you were giving them more of you, most of you, Howie calls it Toys R Us, because Howie loves to tell stories and he loves to teach through stories. And I do too. I really relate to that. So if you think about a kid when they've got a toy, right, they want to explore that toy and they want to work out its best features, and they want to know what makes it exciting, etc. Well, in many respects, we as parents particularly, and also educators, are our children's favorite toys. They want to explore us, they want to interact with us, they want to connect in relationship with us. And unknowingly or inadvertently, we are often, like, even imagine they've got a remote control, and we teach them how to get more of us, how to get the best of us, how to get the juiciest connection from us in an upside down way. And we do that without knowing. And it alludes to what you were sharing, Freddie. We give all of that energy, the beautiful pep talks, even if they're kind and gentle pep talks, we give them when things are going wrong, when rules are being broken, when kids are being disrespectful, fighting with their sibling, not listening, you know, all of those things. That's when we come in and give the energy, attention, and relationship. And kids get to learn that they get more of us, that they get juicier relationship from us when things are going wrong. And I love what Howie says, because he says we're never too busy to reprimand, to punish, to lecture, even if it's a sweet, lovely lecture. You know, you shouldn't be disrespectful. Like, it doesn't matter. We come in at the wrong time. So I love what you said about timing, because so expand on that a little bit. Maybe for those of you who don't know anything about the Nurtured Heart approach, it's based on 3 stands. And the aspect of the timing that Freddie just shared with us is so important. I call it the Nurtured Heart dance. So maybe talk a little bit about that timing, Freddie, and how even seconds or minutes of that timing can change everything.
Yeah, I wanna kind of go back to the Toys R Us story if we have a chance in a minute. But your question right now is great. So, you know, I'm a high school student. I'm a high school teacher who's dealing with high school age kids. So, you know, 14 to 18 basically years old here in the States. And you know, they're learning who they are. They're pushing limits. They're trying to become independent of their parents or teachers or whatever. And that's what we want them to do. Ideally, you know, they come in as middle school kids and they're going to leave as adults. You know, they're fully fledged adults when they graduate high school. So we want to encourage that. But sometimes it's like, you know, I was dealing with some pretty rough kids. Our school was a college prep school for kids who are going to be the first in their families to go to college.
Nice.
And we're right here, you know, 30 miles from the Mexican border. And you know, there's some rough neighborhoods, rough families dealing with a lot of, you know, generational discriminations and all kinds of things. So my point in saying all of that is there were times when a kid would, you know, just be cussing me out, yelling, screaming. They're not okay with anything I'm saying. And you would literally, once I'm starting to learn the Nurtured Heart approach, it's like you got to be ready to pounce, right? Because we don't want to energize the negative. That's stand 1, is I'm not going to energize the negative. Then stand 2 is I am going to fully energize the positive, what I want. Stand 3, we'll talk about it later, but that's to be absolutely clear. So what I'm talking about is the dance between energizing. Like, I'm not going to ignore bad behavior. I'm going to notice it. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm just not going to energize it. And there's a world of difference, but it's incredibly subtle and nuanced. So I'm talking about this kid would be yelling and screaming, maybe even cussing, right? They're breaking a ton of rules. I'm not going to energize that. I'm going to almost like just a toy, like Lillian was describing, unplugged. So all the energetic, cool, fiery Mr. Mendoza just off while they're yelling and screaming, cussing, whatever they're doing. But at some point, and sometimes what I'm trying to stress is it's literally they just take a deep breath in order to yell and cuss and scream at me again. But while they inhale, right? While they're doing that inhale, I'm going to jump in there like, thank you so much. You're not screaming. You're not yelling. And then they're yelling again. So I stop. But when they make that inhale, look at that. You stopped again. You're not yelling. You're not screaming. Now they are. So I stop. And at some point, there's this dance where the reality, the truth of the moment is when they're taking that inhale of breath, and this is a crazy example, I'm going extreme. They're usually not this extreme. But while they're inhaling that breath, they're not cussing. They're not yelling. They're not breaking any rule. And I want to recognize that.
Yeah.
And then when they are breaking the rule, that's when I want to shut the energy off. So just quickly, if I could, Lillian, like the Toys R Us story is great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the Toys R Us story is great, right? Howard, I don't know where these come from. He says he wakes up and has these 3 o'clock in the morning epiphanies, and I believe him. But he came up with this Toys R Us story, and it's great. If you think about when a child or even an adult, any person gets a gift, a toy especially, we check out all the little features, right? You want to push the buttons, you want to pull the levers, you want to do everything. And if it's a boring reaction, you're still going to maybe try it one more time to just see if it was a fluke or not. But if you go 2 or 3 times and it's a boring feature, you're just going to stop pushing that button. You're going to stop pulling that lever. And if the whole toy is boring, you know, watch a kid, they'll give it a minute or two, and then that toy gets tossed to the side and they're uninterested. But you get a feature that's exciting, it's got bells, whistles, you know, fireworks, whatever it's got, that one they're going to keep going back to. And so with the nurtured heart approach, and what we're asking parents and teachers to do is, you don't want to fight that. That human instinct is brilliant. We just, the way I think of it is like hot wiring the, you know, disconnecting the wires and connecting them opposite. We just want to make sure that the boring reaction, the one that they're going to stop pushing on, that's what we don't want them to do. That's when they're breaking rules. That's when they're pushing boundaries. That's when they're doing things that we don't want them to do. We have to wire that when they do that, they get the boring reaction, because that will make them stop on their own. They don't want the boring reaction. They want the big reaction. So what we have to do is give the big reaction to the things we want them to do. And just briefly, because that gets so theoretical and whatever, especially in a short setting like this, I just want to be practical. Like as a teacher, if I say, hey, everybody get out your books, turn to page 33, read the directions, you know, blah, 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 and everybody's doing it, I'm not going to interrupt that. Oh my gosh, why would I possibly say anything? I'm going to start looking at what my next lesson is. I'm going to start grading papers quietly at my, I'm like in heaven, like, oh my gosh, a room full of students is doing what they should be doing. But we want to do the opposite of that. We want to really give them energy, kudos, recognitions in those moments. Because again, what we normally do is wait till someone's not doing that. And then we come in with our energy. Again, how many parents, you sneak by your child in their bedroom, you know, playing with a sibling or a friend, and they're playing brilliantly, and you don't want to interrupt. You're like, well, I don't want to say anything. I might disrupt what they're doing. So you just quietly go about your business. But man, you hear a slam or a cuss or a yell or, you know, some sort of bad thing happening, and you're running in full steam. Veins are popping, spit flying, you got all colorful language, you got all kinds of stuff. You are fully engaged in the bad. And you're trying to like quietly just really notice the good. And we just want to reverse that. So that was longer than I meant to talk, but that's all we're talking about. Just reverse that timing.
And look, I think you've really hit the nail on the head, and I'm going to steal that, because I think the timing thing is really what Nurtured Heart is all about. You know, I often talk about the upside down thing because so many of us just don't know that. And I love how, you know, we use the 3 stands and that beautiful Nurtured Heart approach stance, and there's no way that we can, you know, share that with everybody on this call, but I love how we then bring in stand 3, which of course is clarity around rules and consequences. But I love teaching the reset, because when the kid is escalated and breaking rules and mucking up, and we want to come in with that, you know, that energy, we want to come in normally with that connection, then that's when we need to self-regulate. That's when we need to take those deep breaths and reset and just take a few deep breaths whilst not giving energy to that negativity, but being ready, as you said, to pounce the second the breath, or I could see you starting to calm yourself down, even if they were at 9 out of 10 escalation and they've gone down to 7. Freddie, I can see you're starting to calm yourself down. That really shows me in this moment that you have great self-control and you're really being respectful now to your brother. You know, like we have to, it's like, you know, we want to water what we want to grow. And I love that watering can analogy. You know, we wouldn't go out and water the weeds with beautiful fresh water with nutrients in it because we don't want the weeds to grow. But so many times in our relationship, in career, as parents and educators, we are totally watering the things that we don't want to grow. So if there was one tip we could give parents, it would be to be very mindful of that timing aspect that Freddie just shared. We could talk all day on this, Jeepers. We've already been going for about 20 minutes, but I want to talk a little bit, and we might just go another 5 minutes or so. I want to talk a little bit about how this nurtured heart approach dance and how using the nurtured heart approach with each other helps to build what we in nurtured heart approach called inner wealth, and building a portfolio. Because when you think about it, you know, as we are parenting, particularly, and we've got kids for anywhere from, you know, 18 to, well, I've still got 36 and 29-year-olds in the home. And actually, Freddie, I've got a back step. Freddie is in a home where he is a nurtured heart approach trainer. His beautiful mum, Anita, is a nurtured heart approach trainer, and your daughter is a nurtured heart approach trainer, and they all live together. So can you imagine the beautiful, juicy connection and relationship that's going on in that home? But, you know, as parents, when you think about it, what is our goal as a parent? Like, our goal as a parent is, over however many years that is, 18, 20 plus years, for some people less, is to help guide our children to be the best that they can be. So when they go out into the world, they're confident, they have resilience, they are kind, they are thoughtful, they're good people who are then going to attract likewise good relationships into their life and attract good careers or jobs. But sadly these days, and this is what, you know, this is why I'm so passionate about nurtured heart approach, is sadly today kids, as they approach 15, 16, 17, 18, their portfolios are full of, I'm not good enough. I'm not loved. I'm not seen. I'm not, you know, like, I'm always getting into trouble. Even my mum and dad, who should be my biggest supporters and fans, don't get me, don't understand me, don't see me. They have all of this negative, you know, self-esteem, self-worth, self-respect, self-love. And our goal, I feel, through nurtured heart approach, is to build, and we call it their inner wealth. So to me, inner wealth is everything that we want to grow: self-esteem, self-worth, self-respect, self-love, etc. And the portfolio, if you're not quite sure what I mean by that, think of a physical portfolio and an artist putting all of their best artwork in that portfolio, where we're wanting to build a portfolio with all of the greatnesses of our children. And we want, so for example, if we want them to be a respectful adult, we want to be building that over the years that we are parenting them, to let them know at every opportunity we can, gee, Freddie, you know, that really shows me how respectful you were just then. Whatever, like, we want to build that shows me how thoughtful you are, how kind you are, how resilient you are. Oh my gosh, you know, like, and we're wanting to build all that stuff instead of the stuff that sometimes even the best parents are doing, is building the stuff that we really don't want in the portfolio. So maybe, do you want to add on to that, anything onto that?
Oh man, there was about 20 things I wanted to add into that, because we could literally talk for, you know, I'm a teacher, so I think it's semesters. I could give semester long classes on so many different things, and I hope people who are listening might be interested in the future in learning more. But what really struck me was right at the end, my family owned a pool business. And so I was thinking of pools when you were talking, because you know what a pool that is 99.9% leak free is? It's a pool with a leak. And you know what most pool owners are freaking out about is that 0.1% that's leaking, right? And I understand why, you know, right? Like, that makes perfect sense to me when it's a pool. We don't want to talk about the 99% that's perfect. We don't want to talk about that extra little 0.9% even that's going well. We want to talk about the leak. But our kids are not like that. Our kids are not pools. And what a horrible, horrible tragedy if we have a kid that's 99.9% right, good, respectful, ambitious, all the greatnesses. Because again, this is just, it almost gets spiritual for me, but we all have every greatness that could ever exist inside of us. Some need to be discovered, uncovered, recovered, but they're all there.
Yeah.
So what if, instead of, as the parent and the teacher, just pounding on that 0.1, maybe it's even 5%, right? Like, go crazy and say they're 95% good and 5% bad, but man, we just beat people up over that 5%.
Yeah.
And so to go back a little bit more, like, when I got to high school, you know, you might even tell even just in this 20-minute call, I am passionate. I have a brain that's like flying all over the place. My portfolio told by parents and things like it was always Freddie, not now. Fred, no, Freddie, quiet. No, we're not talking about that now. Put your hand down. No, Freddie, focus. Please be quiet. Sit back down. Get out the worksheet. No, that's not what we're talking about today. That was just a constant soundtrack of my school. You know, that was my educational experience. So I thought I had no impulse control. I had no focus. I was disruptive. I talked too much. Like I had this horrible thing of what people had told me, and no one was ever telling me like, that's really interesting. Like you're being thoughtful, you're being expressive, you're being creative, you're wanting to share your opinions, you're wanting, like, all of these things were never brought up. It was always the bad. And then the last thing that I wanted to just bring up, I think it's related, is I really like to think of our energy. Like you brought up the watering can, and I love the watering can. I also like to think of it as like a spotlight. You know, so if we are being the directors, this is coming straight from Howie again, from Howard Glasser. But if we are thinking of ourselves as the director of not only our lives, but our kids' lives, like our attention is the spotlight. So what kind of movie are we making? If this kid is again doing the right thing 80, 85, 90% of the time, but we're putting our spotlight only on the 5 to 10% that's bad, that's going to be a rough movie to watch, man. That's going to be the movie of all the bloopers, right? That's all the follies. I want a highlight reel. Like, let's reverse that. Let's be more like the Sports Center highlights, right? Like, we only want to show the best moments. That's where we want to spend our attention. It's not that we're ignoring the bad. The bad's there, but the bad's going to be there regardless. So I guess the last thing I would say is when you focus on the good, you build up a sort of momentum. You start feeling successful. You can watch kids, they start sitting up a little straighter, they get a little more shine in their eyes, their smile's a little brighter, they start feeling good about themselves. And then that's the momentum that you can ride on, that you can use to fill in those weaknesses. And of course, it works with adults and with our spouses and with ourselves as well. That's the hidden secret.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, we could talk forever. We might have to do a part 2 to this one. But thank you so much for the beautiful conversation. And if you've tuned in today and you've heard me and you know a little bit about Nurtured Heart Approach, hopefully you know more. If you've tuned in and you knew nothing about Nurtured Heart Approach and you're still like, what is this all about? But it sounds interesting. Please reach out to Freddie. Please reach out to myself. We are here to help support you. We're happy to have conversations with you. So if you're in the States, please reach out to Freddie. If you're in Australia, or it doesn't matter either way, we're happy to chat with anybody. But it's something that we are so passionate about. And I really feel, Freddie, like, you know, when you've got something and you just want to get on the rooftop and you want to go, hey, everybody, you know, like imagine, like I see the transformations in the homes that the parents that I coach. You would definitely see it on a bigger scale, having, you know, impacted many students, and you don't know where that goes, do you? You know, so like that could be like, wow. But I see the impact. I see, you know, the relationships growing and changing in these families. And I think back to our challenging years with our son, and I'm like, if I knew this then, oh my gosh, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you, because I might not have been attracted to Nurtured Heart Approach. So I am grateful for all of those challenges. But when I think back to my parenting and all the love that my husband and I had in our heart for our family, and particularly for our youngest son, who was diagnosed with ADHD, ODD, and childhood depression, if I knew this stuff then, oh my gosh, because my husband and I were teachable. We just didn't know. We didn't have the tools in our toolbox, and we were running on instinct, and our instinct was to do it all upside down. The educators were doing it all upside down. Like from 3.5 years on, my son's childcare centre kept a communication book on him, and 99% of that was all the negative stuff he was doing. So not only did they feel bad, he felt bad, we felt bad. We were focusing on all the negative stuff because that's what we were reading every day. And then it all came back onto our son. Like we were just focusing on all the negativity, even though we wanted things to be better, we didn't know how to turn it around. So by understanding the timing of the Nurtured Heart dance, wow, what a difference that can make for families. So do you want to just quickly share about the Nurtured Heart Institute if people want to tune into that?
Oh man, there's so many things I want to
I
add.
know. Right.
I would just say this because I sat through so many meetings where students are getting, in trouble or there's therapists involved, count whatever. So I would just say, can you imagine a world where the big old fat, thick diagnostic book or the files that these kids have had early onset greatness as opposed to early onset whatever, in the negative sense? So instead of diagnosing what's going wrong and trying to spend all our energy there, how different the world would be if we were spending our time talking about what's going right. But yes, to the Nurtured Heart Institute. There's a couple pages on Facebook. So if you look up Nurtured Heart Approach, you can join that page. There's 3 questions to answer. It's very easy. There's only about 3 of us who are admins who will let you in. So that's easy. It's just Nurtured Heart Approach. And then the Nurtured Heart Institute is new within the last year. And so the website is just that, nurturedheartinstitute.com. And there's a ton of resources and a ton of places to reach out and do different things. So I hope that if you're interested, you will find out more. I'm like Lillian. I've only really been involved for the last 3 years, but I just want to scream on the top of every rooftop, just every single person on the planet who could find out about Nurtured Heart Approach would be benefited. That is just what I believe, and that's what I'm trying to do, is just spread the word.
Yes, to that. So if anything that we've shared with you aligns today, just reach out, make a comment on this Facebook live, reach out to Freddie, reach out to myself, check out those resources. We'd love to chat with you. But we better go, Freddie. We really could keep talking.
We went way over.
If you've listened in until the end, we appreciate your greatness of patience and tenacity. So thank you so much. And until next time, bye from Lillian and Freddie.
Bye from Freddie.
Bye.